I remember as a young teenager listening to an interview with the SNP leader in the run-up to the 1983 general election, Gordon Wilson. And I didn't like the way in which the leader of the Scottish Party, as I called him to my mother and father, was being spoken to on the radio. I thought it was disrespectful, and I thought Scotland should be treated with greater respect than was the case then. And that's one of the first things that I actively remember. My mother tells a story of an earlier political connection with the SNP, which is when, as a kid, and I grew up with German as a first language. My mother came from there, and I had been uptown, and I came back to tell her that I'd met Herr Wolf, who was Billy Wolf, who was the leader of the SNP, and I'd managed to transliterate his name into German. So but that was a long time before I actively remember that how the SNP was being covered in the 1983 general election. It was a very political time because, of course, we had Margaret Thatcher as Prime Minister, and we hadn't voted for her, and I didn't think that was right. Normal countries elect their own governments. And so in 1985, I found a leaflet in the street for the Young Scottish Nationalists, join the YSN, and I sent that off to the SNP headquarters, and then some days later, this tall chap with glasses arrived at the door and gave me a membership card and told me when the next meeting was, and that person's name was Charlie Reid.
Of the Proclaimers.
He then, shortly afterwards, played his first concert with his brother Craig as the support act to the Housemartins in the Assembly Rooms in Edinburgh, and I was at that gig. So that was it was a hugely exciting time to get involved in politics, although frustrating as well, because obviously we had the Thatcher government in, and we thought it was appalling what was going on, but people at that stage were still voting for the Labour Party, sadly. So the difference between Scottish politics in the 1980s, where people still thought that voting Labour would save them, when now we know it doesn't, is massive. But that change is down to the efforts of so many people who have changed public opinion in Scotland to believe that we can do things better, but we just have to trust ourselves and take responsibility for ourselves.
And do you feel like there's anything that you learned from journalism that's helped you in your career in politics?
Massively, because I think what journalism and politics has in common, if you do it right, is about being able to communicate effectively. And I believe that I worked objectively as a journalist, and I think I try my best to be objective about Scotland's situation when I make the case for us being a normal, independent country, and try and use the communication skills that I learnt in journalism to best effect. And one of the things I learnt along the way, and it's something that the SNP has taken on, is the value of communicating in a positive way, and that's something that I, together with other colleagues, worked to introduce when I was the campaign director in 2007 for the first parliamentary election that we won, and in 2011 where we became a majority government. In both of those campaigns we worked very hard to have a relentlessly positive message, something we also tried to do in the referendum campaign. And I think that for me goes back to my background in journalism, where understanding if you're making a case, trying to do it in a positive way, and that is far more persuasive than trying to win people over and through negative argument, which I don't think is convincing in the long term.
And obviously you're saying you were involved in the 2007 campaign, the 2011 campaign, and you've been in the SNP from before the surge and before the SNP became more of a mainstream political party. I mean, I guess, what was it like in the SNP before the surge?
Well, first off, in a way that's relevant to the Depute Leadership campaign, is one of the people who became active in the SNP at the same time as me is one Nicola Sturgeon, who you may have heard of, and is doing a tremendous job as our party leader and as First Minister. And I think that for me is one of the huge attractions of running for this post, which is that I know Nicola very well. We've worked well together for a long time, and I think we'd make a great leadership team. But I think one of the big differences between pre-surge and post-surge is that it is now the norm for the SNP to be the number one party in this country, and frankly to be one of the best performing parties in Europe, which is why one of the things that I hope that emerges from this deputy leadership race, and all of the candidates are in favour of change, is being able to capture the best ideas to make sure that the party keeps up with the new situation it finds itself in, with 120,000 plus members. We have to get our organisation right. We have to involve people in the best way so that everybody has their part to play in policy development. We have to offer the training, the education that was open to me when I first joined the SNP, and I know a lot of the newer members feel that they'd like to have a part of now. And I think that's, for me, one of the other exciting parts of this contest is there are a lot of good ideas out there. Some of them are untried, untested, uncosted, but I think there is a willingness amongst all the candidates to understand that we do need to do as much as we can to upgrade organisation, to involve local government in a better way, to understand how important Europe is. The difference between myself and the other candidates is I actually have the national SNP experience, having been campaign director, having been business convener, so chairman of the party. So I know the difference between how things work and how they're unlikely to work and how to get the best out of the best suggestions. And that's one of the things that I've pledged in this campaign, is that I'd be happy to take forward the best ideas that my colleagues in the race have brought forward and try and make sure that we can implement the best that everybody has brought to the table.
So you're currently the voice of the SNP in Westminster. Are you not concerned that taking on the role of the Depute Leader of the SNP would almost become too much of a responsibility to be both the voice in Westminster and the Depute Leader of the party?
I think there's a huge opportunity of having the SNP leadership bring together our leadership in the Scottish Parliament, Scottish Government, with Nicola Sturgeon, who's the SNP leader, with the SNP leader at Westminster, who's me. It is both of us who are most in the media spotlight every week. Prime Minister's questions, First Minister's questions, on the media the whole time. And I think it makes perfect sense that we have that bringing together of our leadership in the Scottish Parliament and Government and at Westminster. Whether we like it or lump it, much of the European debate in the next few years is going to take place in Westminster, because it's the UK government that is going to be negotiating with the EU on our behalf. And that's why I think having a male-female leadership team is reflective of the country, having a Scottish Westminster leadership team bringing the two of us together, and also having an urban-rural leadership team that reflects Scotland at large. I think that would be the strongest possible leadership team that we can have, also based on the fact that I know and have an established working relationship with Nicola Sturgeon over 3 decades, and I think that counts for quite a lot, because we have to hit the ground running. We don't have a lot of time to make sure that we have thought about everything, made all the necessary preparations, and ensure that if there is to be another referendum, and I believe there probably will be one, that we make sure that we win this time and win well, and don't repeat the disappointment of 2014.
So if you did get the role of Deputy Leader, what would you want to achieve in that position?
First thing that the Deputy Leader needs to do is work well with the leader, and there needs to be a partnership about the politics, about the strategy, about the tactics, and being able to support one another. That's what we need to do in the first instance. The Deputy Leader also has a key role in the SNP in relation to policy, producing the manifesto, and next year we have the local government election, so I would look forward to working together with our local government colleagues, making sure that we have the right manifesto support, both for local manifestos at local level, but also our national approach. And another important thing that I want to bring to a deputy leadership now, after the surge in membership, is that we make sure that the party is in the best state possible as a party of 120,000 members, as opposed to being a party just a couple of years ago of just over 20,000. Now, having the experience of having been the campaign director when we won, having been the business convener when we transformed the way the SNP worked, before bringing in the likes of the Activate data management system, I've got the experience to know how you galvanise the membership, involve everybody, make sure that everybody can play a part. I know how we can do that because I've done it before, and because of that I know that I'll be able to work both with Nicola Sturgeon, the National Executive Committee of the SNP, because we're a democratic organisation and we actually elect people to be in charge of organisational questions or local government questions. We all need to work together, and most importantly of all, work with the grassroots of the party to make sure that everybody is enthused and engaged, because we don't have a lot of time until we may be putting the question of independence to the people of Scotland again, because of the changed circumstances that Scotland finds itself in. And I want to make sure that the SNP is in exactly the right place, organisationally, financially, and in terms of our policy, to make sure that we win independence for Scotland.